Okay, so here we have the top end exposed. So I'm going to start from removing the cam chain cover or shield, and then those oil lines. So I'm going to be removing those bolts here, and those are 12mm. Those two here, those are 12mm too. And then we're going to remove those two and those two for now, and those are 10mm. Okay. Yeah, they are torqued up tight. Easy with those. So those are removed, and I've put them in this cardboard to have exactly the same order on assembly. Alright people, so have a look at this. So I've turned the crankshaft, so I have the T13 mark aligned with the place where crankcases meet, and with that position you're going to have some timing marks on those sprockets. So as you can see, you've got the first mark here, okay, and that's somewhat aligned with the surface of the cylinder head, and you've got the second mark here, see, just here, and that's aligned with the surface of the cylinder head, and that way I'm going to be able to remove those cam sprocket bolts. There's one here on the left hand side, there's going to be a second one here, okay, on the right hand side. Once those two are removed, I'm then gonna turn the crankshaft 360 degrees again to remove the remaining two cam sprocket bolts. Right folks, so I've loosened up those sprockets, and as you can see I've put a rag in there because those sprockets are in a position where if you dropped it, it goes straight into your crankcase, and that would be a bad day. Got to be really careful removing those. So they're somewhat short, and there we go, one removed, and then I'm going to go on the other side and remove that one too. Alright, so this is the right hand side of the motorcycle. There we have it. I'm almost sure it doesn't drop in there. Okay, second one comes out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the crankshaft 360 degrees, and then we'll take it from there. Alright, so I've turned the crank 360 degrees. I've loosened those up, and once again I'm going to use two hands just to make sure it doesn't drop anywhere. Alright, now when it came out, and then I'm going to go on the left hand side of the motorcycle to remove the last one. Alright, so once again on the left hand side, this is my last bolt here. Okay, the last one came out. Alright peeps, so now I've got the T13 mark on the rotor there aligned with the crankcase's meeting point. So I've got my camshafts in certain position. This is with the pistons on the rear bank of cylinders at top dead center. So I've removed the spark plugs, and I can actually see the pistons here, so I know they are at TDC. And I've also marked the cam holders, so TL being top left, TR top right, BR bottom right, BL bottom left. So now, once I've got all those bolts removed from the sprockets, you can now slide the sprockets and chains from the camshafts. See? So that's become so loose, so you can just rest it there, and same thing's going to happen here. Okay, so we've got all of that loose, and also what I can see here, there are some marks here on those camshafts. It says ER here, which means exhaust rear, and then you've got IR here, which is obviously meaning intake rear. Alright, having all this slack here, it's going to be very easy now to remove those oil lines. And something to remember as well is those oil lines, okay, they are installed on the rear cylinders. They are installed with the shorter lines towards the rear of the bike and longer lines towards the front of the bike. Alright, so when it comes to those two bolts here on the rear cylinder's exhaust cam, you might be thinking that they won't come out because they'll be hitting the frame. The trick is that you've got to kind of loosen up the cam holder first, and when the holder is loose, those bolts will just come out nicely and easily. So now I'm going to be able to remove the cam holders. You've got to be careful because they've got those dowel pins, and those dowel pins like to come out. If they come out and drop into your crankcase, now that's a bad day for you. You see? And this came out of the dowel pin. If that dropped in the engine, that would be quite bad. It moved, and again came out with the dowel pin. And by the way, that's what they look like from the bottom. There's not really much there. Okay, and the last one here. Just going steady with it. I don't want to drop anything inside the engine. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Doesn't want to come out yet. And this time dowel pin stayed in there. Peeps, so at that point you'll be able to remove the camshafts, because you've got lots of slack here and it's all pretty much ready for you to remove. So you would just lift the cam, just get this chain off, and it comes off. Right, now the same on the other side. Just lift the cam. You can rest this chain on this tensioner. All that comes off. Right, now I'm going to be removing this tensioner, and it's held there by 4 bolts. Those are 10mm bolts, so you see them there. There's 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I'll get them off, and hopefully we'll be able to remove this. Alright, so this tensioner is now free, and now just wiggling this left and right, left and right. Seems like you can just remove this. You've got to open this here to remove, because look, this chain goes through that hole in the tensioner. So to separate the two, you've got to open this and remove this part here. So I'm going to cover the engine with rags, and I'm going to try to do it now. Okay peeps, so have a look. I've got it all pretty damn well covered. Not only I've got rags in the engine, I've also got this plastic bag on top of the rags. And now what I'm going to try to do, see there's this little pin here, you see this pin? Alright, let me just magnify it. Okay, so here we have this little pin here. So I'm going to try to pull this. Oh, came off easily. So here we have it, the pin and the little washer. And having this removed, you are now able to push this shaft. Right, you are now able to push this shaft down, and that way you can take this slide off, right, and that way you can just release the chain. Right, and I'm gonna put this back in there the same way it came out, because I don't want to be messing around with proper assembly later. Then there was a little washer on top of it, and then there was that pin. Alright people, so here we have this old chain, which I'm gonna have to split. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm gonna grind off one of those little pins here. Let me just magnify it so you see exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna grind off one of those pins, let's say that one there, and then I'm gonna use a chain splitting tool to push that pin through, and that's gonna split that chain. Having this chain split, I'm gonna attach my new chain to it with a wire, and then I'm gonna turn the engine and feed both chains through, so the old chain comes out completely and the new chain is engaged with the crankshaft. And then I'm gonna take the wire off and then hopefully I'll be able to rivet the new chain, and that's going to be the job. Alright people, so have a look at this. You can see that my converted tool is somewhat successful. So I keep pushing, and in a minute that pin should come out. And here we have it. You see that I've managed to actually get that pin out a bit. Alright peeps, so let's try to wind it in. Get this pin out completely. So if I now, there we go. We've got the chain split. Right people, so here's the pin. I removed it with pliers. Chain broken, and now we can connect the new chain to that one and feed it through. Alright peeps, so here we have the new chain. The new chain came open with a rivet link, which is going to be great. So what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to have to connect both chains. And I'm going to do this with a wire like this. So I'll just feed this wire through. Alright, so that went through, like so. Hopefully, so look what I've got here. And those two bits here I'm going to have to remove, obviously. And I'm going to use pliers for that. Alright peeps, so have a look at this. So I've got the new chain here, old chain here, and I've got the wire fed through that hole there. And I've bent both ends of that wire so it holds nicely that chain, and it's not gonna release it. And now I'm gonna have to turn the engine and feed it all through. So I'm holding the chain here with my hand, okay, and I'm gonna be turning the engine counterclockwise, which means that part here will be going down and it's gonna be fed through the crankshaft, and the other part of the chain will be coming out. And we want to do it until the old chain fully comes out. Just in there, we've got, see here, we've got the piece of wire I've put through. So the black chain is the new chain, and all of that here is the old chain. I'm just going to grab it here. It should just come out. Wire came out, and chains separate. So here we have it. This is the old chain, and now another tough job will be riveting this new chain. Put this through like that. Alright. And then the other end. We'll connect with it like that. And then you've got this plate here. And now we just have to crush those two pins, and then the chain will be secure. Alright people, so I'm pretty much done with riveting of that link now. So as you can see, this silver plate, that here is the rivet sort of plate, and it's got those two brass pins, brass or bronze, I don't know what they are, but they're a bit softer. And what you've got to do, you've got to clamp those pins between a flat plate at the back, which is going to be pushing on the pin at the back, and then between that pin at the front, and then you just keep clamping it, and then you just clamp the tool, squeeze it, which essentially flattens that plate. So that here is the new link, and that pin have been flattened out. And then just check if the chain can move okay. This seems like it can. There we go. Right, so this is the cam chain tensioner from the VF motor. So this is in Magnas, Interceptors and Sabres. So that slide here removes. You can remove it by just pulling out this pin, and it comes off. And obviously this is secured with that little wire pin. And now if you take a look at this mechanism, so there's going to be that rod here, and if you pull it here, you see how it moves? If you pull it back and press on that rod, it actually, you see how it all moves? And there's a spring in there, inside there, and that spring wears out allegedly. So I bought myself a new spring from Honda, and I'm going to replace that. So to replace it, you're going to have to also take off that pin here at the top. Comes off easily. Alright, and then you push this out. Right, so there's a washer and another pin, and that way the whole mechanism becomes somewhat loose, you see? See how it disassembles? So that rod goes through that hole here, so you just have to pull it out, and then you've got everything so loose that you've got those two parts here, and then inside there's a spring which is covered in this rubber boot. So all you have to do now, you see this is how the spring attaches here. It attaches on that pin. So now if you just grab a pick or whatever and lift it, you'll release that spring. There we go. So the spring is released, and now you can take it all off. There we go. Sorry, you probably didn't see it, but yeah. So there we go, and inside this boot, there's a spring. So once again, if I grab this spring here with the pick and pull it, it will come out. And that's, by the way, the part number. So now the spring goes in the boot. Right, so the spring attaches like so from the top. That's what it looks like. So you've got the spring in the boot here. Right, so you put that banana part sort of thing with its rod through that hole here, right? And then just in there you'll have, as you can see, the boot with a spring inside, and you've got to pull that spring onto that pin. Okay, so I've got the spring on, and I'll just pull my tool away. And there we go. That now goes through here. And there's a security pin, the R pin as they call it. Alright, so in just a moment I'm going to be installing this tensioner, but first I'm just going to show you. You see there's that groove at the very bottom, and this is where the tensioner needs to go. It really needs to be sat there at the bottom. Alright, so it needs to go there into that groove. Right peeps, so first I'm gonna put this tensioner here so the chain feeds through it, and then I've got, of course, you've got this guide here. So once you've got that chain sort of fed through here, through here. You can then install your slide, your little washer. Right, so the pin has gone through. Right, so now I'm going to torque up those cam tensioner holding bolts, and this is just 12 Newton meters. Alright peeps, so before we start in the installation of the camshafts, you're going to have to get yourself a bit more chain slack so it's easier for you to do it all. To get more chain slack, you're going to have to, you see this there? You're going to have to pull this tab, okay, at the same time pulling this tensioner's arm upwards. Right peeps, so I'm just putting those camshafts in, and again it's with the camshafts ID marks, so intake rear, exhaust rear towards the top. Again, the intake camshaft goes in with the hole towards the left of the motorcycle, and exhaust camshafts towards the hole towards the right of the motorcycle. Sprockets, the sprockets are interchangeable, but I know that one came from the rear because I marked it with this white dot. And on those sprockets you're going to have those flat lines here, and those flat lines need to be flush with the surface of the cylinder head. Okay, so the sprocket for the exhaust goes in, and initially I just put it all in there like loosely, sort of like that, and again I'm going to install that one as well through here. Alright people, so I've got both camshafts in and the sprockets engaged on those flanges. I've got engine timed correctly, so I've got those intake and exhaust signs facing upwards. Camshafts are in the same position as they were when I took them out. I've got those lines here on the sprockets flush with the cylinder, surface with the flush with the surface of the cylinder head. So I've put the top camshaft bolts in, and now I'm going to turn the engine 180 degrees, so I'll be able to put the bottom bolts in the sprockets. Another thing worth to mention, when you're installing this tensioner in the engine, it's good to put it in the service mode. The way you do it is, you see I've got my tool inserted into that hole here, and the way it works is you simply pull that tab, okay, here, and having this pulled, you basically pull on that towards the top, and this will help you to align two holes, a hole from that arm and a hole from that outer part together. You put a pin in there, and this is your service mode, and then you just install it in the engine. So I've put some assembly lube on those, and obviously you need to check if you've got your dowel pins either on your cam holders or over there, and obviously they all go back to the same place, bottom left, which is that one here. Okay peeps, so I've got the cam holders not torqued up yet, but sitting there really snug. And now with the tensioner still in the service mode, you can see I still have my pin here. I'm going to install those oil lines, and oil lines have to be installed with the shorter pipes towards the rear of the motorcycle, and you even have the sign here saying RR, meaning right rear. Right, so I've got the oil pipes loosely there, but I forgot I've got my pin here, which needs to come out. Okay, so at the end what goes on here is that plate, and then of course you've got those long bolts with this in the middle. Alright, so first I'm going to start with the biggest bolts, and those are torqued up to 43 Newton meter. Okay, so it's now time for those. I'm going to start here, going 1, 2, 3 and 4. Right, now finally those smaller bolts here with number 10 on them, and those torque up to between 10 and 12 Newton meters, so I'm going to go for 10. Hey peeps, so this is it, job done. Everything is torqued up, finished, closed when it comes to this top end. All you've got to do now, all I did was I turned the engine 720 degrees to make sure nothing's binding, nothing's stopping it. The engine turns smoothly, there's no nasty noises, nothing. But this chain seems to be really tight compared to the one which I had on it before. The timing marks are all correct, so all I have to do now is basically put the cover back on here, install the tank and the rest of paraphernalia. Then it's time for a startup. Thanks for watching, till next time.